Tonight I'll be talking about the real meaning of the First Amendment. Here's the first thing you should know about the media of that time. There was no CNN when the Founding Fathers wrote the First Amendment. It was 1791, so no New York Times, no Bloomberg, and your sister's friend's cousin's boyfriend's podcast won't launch for 233 more years. News traveled so slowly that it took more than 6 months for news to spread across the 13 colonies that the war was over. The Founding Fathers had a completely different understanding of news than we do. To them, news and opinion were one of the same. It came in the form of political pamphlets like Thomas Paine's Common Sense, the kind of words that could rouse the rabble and lead to a revolution. These pamphlets and then later newspapers were funded by political partisans. There was no pretense of objectivity. These newspapers carried vicious and often anonymous attacks. One of Thomas Jefferson's supporters called John Adams a flip-flopper who had a hideous hermaphroditical character which has neither the force of a man nor the gentleness and sensibility of a woman. Not bad. 18th century insult comic, not bad at all. Although I suspect it would sound a lot meaner in a tweet. On one hand, the Founding Fathers lionized a free press, and by press they meant published opinion, aka free speech. Sam Adams, the colonial leader, not the beer from Boston, was soaring in his rhetoric. He wrote, "There is nothing so fretting and vexatious, nothing so justly terrible to tyrants and their tools and abettors as a free press." Benjamin Franklin claimed that whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freeness of speech. And George Washington, not to be outdone, commanded, "If the freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter." These are some heady words from some heady men. Men who were far less enamored of newspapers. They hated them. I mean, really hated them. Nothing can now be believed which is seen in a newspaper. Truth itself becomes suspicious by being put into that polluted vehicle. So said Thomas Jefferson, who probably shouldn't talk about his polluted vehicle, given how he used one to father children with a woman he enslaved. Thomas Paine, the famed political pamphleteer, had far less regard for newspapers, which he called the organs of falsehood. They only print what they want you to believe. Alexander Hamilton accused newspapers of working against the national interest, while John Adams viewed them as vehicles of personal slander and often of gross and injurious misrepresentations of measures, men and characters, public and private. Them's fighting words for men who settled arguments with pistols. Objectivity, the kind you hear thrown about in certain journalistic circles, didn't become a thing until the 1890s when Adolph Ochs bought the New York Times. Adolph. No one names their kids that today, do they? Ochs separated editorials from news and vetted advertisements to ensure they were not scams, a first in the industry. This approach, which emphasized reliable truthfulness in news coverage, was in stark contrast to the sensationalist and often sensationalized yellow journalism practiced by Joseph Pulitzer's The World and William Randolph Hearst's New York Journal. He summed it up in what would become the New York Times' famous tagline, "All the news that's fit to print." The objective journalism model Ochs championed 130 years ago became a standard for news outlets worldwide. The notion was simple: keep the facts sacred and opinions relegated to the editorial pages. Fast forward to the present, and it seems we've come full circle. The clear lines between news and opinion have blurred once again in the digital age. You might say they're hermaphroditic. Social media feeds, blog posts, and mainstream media segments are equal parts fact, opinion, and backshit, mirroring the partisan press of the early American Republic. Today's news landscape, with its 24/7 news cycles and echo chambers, would likely make our pamphlet publishing forefathers feel right at home. In a way, the digital age has democratized information, allowing anyone with an internet connection to be a modern-day Thomas Paine or a pint-sized pundit. This return to a landscape where news and opinion are viewed as one makes it hard to sort fact from fiction. So, as we navigate this new old world of news, where everyone's a broadcaster and every opinion has a platform, remember, in the 18th century, they had to wait 6 months to learn the war was over. Today, we argue over the color of a dress or the sound of a word on the internet in real time. And if the Founding Fathers thought newspapers were the polluted vehicle of their time, one can only imagine what they'd make of Twitter. So this is what they meant by a marketplace of ideas. It's just missing the market and the ideas. In the end, maybe all this means is that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Except now, instead of waiting for the town crier to trip over his words, we just wait for someone to get cancelled over their tweets.